Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Institute for Local Government's webinar today, Tools and Approaches to Address Homelessness. We're really excited for our webinar today. We have some really great speakers. We'll be hearing from Robert Bendorf, the County Administrator from the County of Yuba, who will share more about their 14 Forward project. We'll hear from Jonathan Herrera, Senior Advisor on Homelessness with the City of San Diego, who will share more about their Housing Our Heroes project. And then we'll also hear from Scott Carroll, the General Manager with Costa Mesa Sanitary District, who will share more about some of the things they've been doing around homelessness. And my name is Hong Tran. I'll be your moderator for today. I'm a program coordinator with the Institute for Local Government. Before we get started, I want to share a little more about the Institute for Local Government. We are the nonprofit research and education affiliate of the California State Association of Counties, the League of California Cities, and the California Special Districts Association. And what we really do is promote good government at the local level by providing practical, impartial, and easy-to-use materials. This includes a variety of online and print resources, trainings, technical assistance, and webinars like this one. We have 5 different program areas, including ethics, local government basics, sustainability, public engagement, and partnerships and collaborations. So if you haven't already done so, be sure to check us out at ca-ilg.org. So our webinar today is on homelessness, and as we all know, homelessness is a significant and complex problem that is affecting many, if not all, local governments across the state in some way. To give you an idea of the landscape in California, California is home to nearly half of the nation's homelessness population at 49%. From 2016 to 2017, homelessness grew by 13.7%. So this is a pretty significant problem. And what we hope that you'll learn more about today is different homelessness efforts from 3 different communities, one from a city, a county, and a special district. Our speakers will share more about lessons learned and best practices that came out of their efforts. And then I'll share more about the League and CFAC's Task Force report that was recently released a little later. Before we get to our speakers, I want to go over some housekeeping logistics for the webinar. We will have a comprehensive Q&A following all of our presentations. If at any time you have a question, feel free to type in your question in that little question box, and we'll do our best to get to all questions at the end of the presentation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our first speaker, Robert Bendorf, the County Administrator from the County of Yuba.
Good morning. Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody, and happy Thursday. I want to thank ILG for having us on today, and so we can share a little information with you, and hopefully some of it can help you along in addressing homeless issues, help you get maybe a little bit more organized, or just become a little bit more familiar with what different jurisdictions are doing, because I think as we've all learned, there's really there's some common denominators. There never really is one exact right fit for each jurisdiction, whether you're a city, county, or a special district. So in Yuba County, we had some challenges of where do we start, and we had so many folks in our community that were doing some great work, from nonprofits to local government agencies. And we recognized that there were too many tentacles to the octopus, if you will, and they weren't familiar with each other. And so we took the step to say, hey, we need to start somewhere. And we put everybody in a room that we felt was relevant to the discussion. And I think the group started off a little bit smaller, and then it grew a little bit larger. But as you see on the webinar slide, those are some of the questions that we asked. What are the real numbers, and how many county staff are involved in different areas, how many city staff, it goes on and on. In Yuba, we have 2 incorporated cities and the unincorporated area of the county, just to give you a little bit of a lay of the land. So next slide. So we immediately took these 4 points here. We got organized, everybody had a focus, and the focus was developing an outcome-based approach. What do we want our outcomes to be? And we wanted to get buy-in from everybody, and we wanted to get busy. Next slide. Because if you don't, and I think is what was happening earlier, is you kind of get that, who's on first dilemma going, and it just keeps feeding itself. And we don't really get to address the issue or identify or produce good outcomes. Next slide. So here's what we learned by working together. It was interesting having our Health and Human Service Director in the room. At the same time, our Sheriff's Department and Police Department representatives were there, and we said, geez, so how many homeless do we have? And some of the numbers, as you can see there, we had over 150 homeless in encampments, and then we had some that were scattered. We had, and that information came from the sheriff and police when we asked that question of, what is our homeless population roughly? But then if you turn to the other folks sitting on the other side of the room, how many homeless do we have? Health and Human Services, because they go by, the reporting standards, they said we have about 1,600. So everybody got on the same page, and we said, okay, this is what identifies homeless, because your deputy sheriffs, your police officers, maybe your code enforcement folks, and so on, don't realize that people can be identified as being homeless if they're, say, couch surfing. So we want to know where they were located. Were they in the city? Were they in the county? Do we have enough shelter beds? Do we have enough emergency shelter beds? And what is the line of communication that we have with our homeless population? Is there a single point? Are there several points? And if there are several points, do we coordinate them? And you can see other questions that we asked and learned by just sitting around the table together and folks sharing information. Next slide. So by working together, and I'm really going to emphasize this throughout my presentation, that you have to. If you don't, I believe you're destined for failure. You have to have all of your partners. Everybody has something to bring to the table. And I am a big believer, even if it's one thing, that one item I can guarantee will prove to be valuable. So we got organized. As you can see there on the slide, what we did from establishing hotlines to identifying gaps in services. We hired a homeless project manager here. We stole her from the United Way, which was just a wonderful, wonderful treat for us. And she has proven very worthwhile, but she is our focal point. Getting focused, we wanted to be solution and outcome based. And we wanted to make sure we established ongoing communication, so we just didn't meet to meet, didn't meet once and end it, didn't produce documents that sat on a shelf. So we wanted to make sure we maintained our focus. Next slide. So the buy-in. We not only needed buy-in from our partners, but we needed buy-in from our homeless population themselves. And so my office, in partnership with the Health and Human Services Department, we started holding a few lunch meetings with those in the homeless community that maybe identify themselves as mayors or vice mayors or whatever titles they had. And they would come and we would have maybe 15, give or take 20 at a meeting. We bought lunch, and we did that for quite a while because we wanted to know what they were thinking about some of our upcoming efforts and what they requested. So in the terms of getting busy, we felt one of the needs we identified was emergency temporary shelter. There was none of that. And there were some folks that were very vulnerable that needed that temporary shelter. We took time to design and allocate funding. It was a very small amount. You'd be surprised at how small it was. At the same time, we were working on a long-term plan. We began working on this project for emergency temporary shelter as one of our initial focal points and outcomes, and we hoped things would grow from there. We held animal care events. We had official move day. We conducted outreach with our partners, and those partners were so valuable. And the partners that we had in lockstep with us were folks like the police chief himself, the CRLA representatives, and we all spoke with one voice about what we were doing and our intended outcomes. Next slide. Things you can't forget about while you're doing all this, obviously, and I think I've mentioned it before and I'll continue mentioning it, is that third bullet that really sticks out is fostering relationships. You have to have partners in this effort. Again, if you're going to do it solo, best of luck to you. I hope it works out. If I was placing a bet in Vegas, I would bet that it wouldn't work out. And that's everybody from government to nonprofits to members of the community. You have to think creative. And our group, I think, was very creative and get outside of that bureaucratic fishbowl and put yourself in the place of some of these folks that are homeless and what they're going through, and you focus on the human needs themselves. And I will tell you, it really makes a big difference. And sit down and have lunch with some of them, and I think you'll get a whole new perspective of what they go through every day. And that feeds into the last line there. Next slide. So a few of our partners, I think I went over this before, but here's kind of an extended list and some more to follow. But we had everybody involved because these departments or organizations that are listed here are not only encountering members of our homeless population on a regular basis, but it's also a resource challenge for them as well. There was, again, a lot more partners, but you'll see some of those in a second. Next slide. You know, I will tell you, I mentioned rural legal assistance. They were amazing to work with, and they helped us so much because those who in the homeless population may want to challenge what you're doing, maybe moving folks out of an encampment or if you will, and they don't want to go. Rural legal assistance was there because we did things the right way, and we had them at the table with us, helping to identify that way. They were fantastic. Next slide. So we had to do some cleanup. These are some pictures of the sites of our encampments, kind of some befores. Next slide. And look at the results. So not only did we have a bunch of volunteers helping us clean, we had our solid waste collection provider donate time, money, efforts, etc. And it looked great. We restored big areas of our river bottoms, 3 large, very large, with hundreds of folks encampments in our river bottom area, and you can see the results. Next slide. So where do these folks go? We had to have that plan in place, as I mentioned earlier. We came up with a design called 14 Forward. This is what it contains here. It was placed on county-owned property. We were lucky to have it adjacent to the Twin Cities Rescue Mission, which is a nonprofit. There was talk about, hey, why don't we put up some tents for temporary emergency shelter? And I'm not a big fan of tents. But if I go camping, it's usually the hotel variety. But we arranged for all of these things to be at a site where we can have temporary emergency shelter. Next slide. Our first year of operation, which was about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. It's been getting close to 2 years. We served 141 persons at 14 Forward, and we've employed folks there. You can see the number of service referrals that we had. So even though it was temporary emergency shelter, it was kind of the best we can do for a one-stop shop. Next slide. This is a slide that really sticks out for me when you look at what was donated from the community, because again, we got focused, which allowed the community to focus on something positive, that everybody was pulling towards a solution. And 14 Forward, again, these series of 20 tough sheds where we were able to provide emergency shelter, really provided for that focus, and that continues today. And as a result, we have our first coordinated entry site. We've completed our strategic plan. We have a bi-county JPA with Sutter County, and it's working out really, really well. And we're all, again, focused on outcomes and doing things the right way. Next slide. That's what 14 Forward looks like. You can see the series of tough sheds there. You can see the property that it sits on. Currently today, we have about 30 plus. I think we're at 32 folks staying in those 20 tough shed units. They're insulated. They have other details, which I'm sure will be asked later with some questions, but that's where we have a Connex box for storage. We have shade structures. We have a dog run. We have kennels for each unit for pets. Next slide. I tried to stay right at my 12 minutes best I could. I think I went 1 minute over, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions afterwards. The best part of this is, since we are two parts. One, when we put 14 Forward together, from its concept, identifying the county property and what we're going to put there, to having it ready, was just a shade over 7 weeks. It was gravel and chunks of concrete and debris, nothing on that site. In 7 weeks, we were open for business. And the next best part, since we've opened, we've held over 50 tours, and I think the number's a little, from organizations, municipalities, counties, from all over California, as well as other states. Again, just looking for that one idea that may help provide a solution for their particular area. Thanks for allowing me to speak this morning, and turn it back over to ILG.
Thank you, Robert. What an amazing story. And you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our speakers after all of the presentations. I want to remind everyone that you can type your questions into the questions box, and we'll do our best to get to all of the questions after our presentation. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan Herrera with the City of San Diego.
Good morning, and thank you to you and your team, the entire ILG staff, for the opportunity to be part of today's discussion, but more so to really present on an initiative that's really been successful here in the City of San Diego and housing homeless San Diegans. Next slide, please. So just like dozens of other cities up and down the West Coast, the City of San Diego has really been struggling to deal with not only a growing homeless population, but also a significant increase in the number of unsheltered homeless individuals living in our city streets, parks, canyons, and open space. Between 2014 and 2017, the City of San Diego saw a 31% increase in its unsheltered homeless population and a 263% increase in hand-built structures and tents in downtown San Diego alone. As a region, San Diego County has the fourth largest homeless population in the entire country, with 8,576 individuals experiencing homelessness being counted in the 2018 point in time count. And over the last year, significant investments have been made to address this crisis. And in FY19, this current fiscal year, this upcoming fiscal year, the city is allocating over $29 million for homeless services, which includes a 75% increase in the general fund contribution. This increase is really in large part due to the costs associated with several mayoral initiatives including a transitional campground area, a safe parking program, a housing navigation center, 3 new bridge shelters, and a second property storage facility for homeless individuals. And then the 2018 point in time count was really the first indication that these local investments are starting to move the needle in the right direction. We saw a 13% reduction in our total homeless population, a 19% reduction in our unsheltered population, a 36% reduction in the chronic homeless population, and a 52% reduction in tents and hand-built structures in downtown, 45% citywide. Next slide, please. At the end of the day, the way to end someone's homelessness is obviously by providing them a home. And our focus over the last 2 years has really been to increase the number of housing opportunities that are available. So in addition to the growing homeless population that we discussed, the city is also combating rising rents and a severe lack of affordable housing units that we could utilize to house homeless individuals. With less than a 3% vacancy rate and rents averaging over $1,400 a month, our network of service providers struggle daily with finding placements that their clients can afford or will accept the housing subsidy. And between 2017 and 2020, the city is dedicating $85 million for the creation of permanent supportive housing and affordable housing units. In addition, Mayor Faulkner released the Housing SD Plan, which is a set of over a dozen policy changes meant to increase housing supply, lower development costs, and promote smart growth. But the unfortunate reality is that although these investments are truly needed to ensure the long-term viability of the city's overarching strategy to addressing its homeless crisis, it will be anywhere from 3 to 5 years before we really start seeing the fruits of these investments. And while this capacity is being developed, we're focusing on utilizing existing housing inventories. And this really provided us an opportunity to bring the private sector to the table to be part of that solution. Next slide, please. So by way of background, in his first term, President Obama launched the Joining Forces initiative, which focused on meeting the needs of the nation's veteran population and set an aspirational goal of ending veteran homelessness. In the summer of 2016, as part of the first phase of the Housing First San Diego Homelessness Action Plan, we decided to focus on our homeless veteran population. And we created the Housing Our Heroes program with a goal of housing 1,000 homeless veterans in the upcoming year. This was a $12.5 million investment, leveraging federal, city, and housing authority resources, and was comprised of 4 core components: landlord outreach and engagement, rapid rehousing assistance, the VASH voucher program, and the utilization of federal housing vouchers through our housing authority. Next slide, please. The first component was designed to serve all homeless veterans and had a budget of about $4.4 million. This paid for incentive payments to landlords who made their units available to homeless veterans, as well as provided a dedicated liaison to assist these individuals and landlords with the application and placement process. In addition, a contingency fund was also established to assist landlords cover the costs associated with any unforeseen repairs as a result of housing one of our clients. And the clients themselves could take advantage of the security deposit and utility assistant resources, which are 2 common costs that are often barriers for obtaining housing. Next slide, please. The second component, rapid rehousing assistance, had a budget of about $1.9 million and focused on providing rapid rehousing opportunities for up to 600 homeless veterans in conjunction with ongoing supportive services. This included rental subsidies, assistance with move-in costs, security deposits, ongoing intensive case management, and client outreach. And on behalf of the city, the San Diego Housing Commission issued a request for proposals to identify organizations that would receive funding for the provision of these services. Next slide, please. The third component was designed to serve up to 300 chronically homeless veterans who qualified for the federal VASH voucher program and had a budget of $2.6 million. These clients had access to the same services that we discussed in the previous slides, but in addition, were also able to receive enhanced housing subsidies as well as the access to the VA's healthcare system. And that flexibility was really in large part due to our housing authority's designation as a moving to work agency. And through that designation, we were able to obtain a waiver from HUD that allows for a 20% higher rate payment amount for a VAST voucher, which became effective February 1st of 2016. Next slide, please. The fourth and final component of the Housing Our Heroes initiative focused on focusing our existing housing vouchers to serving our homeless population. With a budget of about $3.4 million, this aspect of the program had the capacity to serve up to 100 homeless veterans. Similarly to other Housing Our Heroes clients, these individuals received access to mental health counseling, substance abuse treatment programs, and job training skills. These resources were made available similarly to partnering service providers through a competitive bidding process administered by the San Diego Housing Commission. Next slide, please. If something matters, you measure it. And outcomes and performance is extremely important. And it's a shift not only in the way we administer our programs, but really a shift in culture, not only here in the city, but with our service providers to hold ourselves accountable. And the fourth and final part of this is obviously the fifth part is taking a look and assessing the return on the investment and the effectiveness of that service model. When this initiative was launched with the goal of housing 1,000 veterans in 1 year, it took us a little bit longer than expected. It took us about 13 months to hit that goal. But by the time all of the funding had been expended, the program had housed over 1,200 homeless veterans. This definitely would not have been possible without the participation of over 435 unique landlords, which made 1,279 units available for our clients. Over the life of the program, the contingency fund was only used 4 times. And this is really an indication of the thorough case management and open communication with the landlords to address any concerns before they become an issue. The 2017 point in time count also indicated a 20.8% reduction in the city's unsheltered veteran population, as well as a 10.6% reduction in the city's total homeless veteran population. And these are the results that we were expecting not only here for our city, but for our region. Next slide, please. In the summer of last year, the city and the San Diego Housing Commission launched the next phase of the Housing First San Diego Action Plan, a $79 million investment over the next 3 years. And building off the success of the Housing Our Heroes program, we are now expanding that service model to serve all homeless subpopulations and are committed to serving 3,000 individuals experiencing homelessness through this next phase of the initiative. We're also investing in new permanent supportive housing units, enhancing our rapid rehousing program, providing assistance for clients transitioning out of permanent supportive housing, and providing prevention and diversion services, as well as creating a coordinated outreach strategy to support our coordinated entry system. Next slide, please. So every community that has made significant headway, and I really feel that you'll see the similar theme throughout all of our presentations, is aligning funding operations with an overarching strategic plan. But equally as important to that is that there's a spirit of collaboration amongst the region's political, civic, private sector, and nonprofit leaders to tackle this crisis. And in San Diego, that really hasn't always been the case, but we're making significant improvements to breaking down our individual silos to create a client-centric crisis response system that can deliver the results we as policymakers are expecting, but more importantly, that homeless San Diegans deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I want to remind everyone, if you have questions for Jonathan or our other speakers, again, go ahead and type them into that question box, and we will do our best following the presentation to get to all of the questions. Now I want to hand it off to Scott Carroll with the Costa Mesa Sanitary District, who's going to share a little bit more about their efforts.
Oh, thank you, Hong, and hi, everyone, and thank you very much, ILG, for inviting me to this on this panel to discuss this really important issue. I was asked to speak on homelessness on behalf of special districts, really to make you aware that special districts are available to help. sure you probably are not aware that there's over 2,000 special districts in California. So chances are you have a special district in your community, and I encourage you to reach out to your special district because they can be a very valuable resource to you. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about us. We were formed in 1944. We're located about 40 miles southwest of downtown Los Angeles. We are in an independent special district. Our niche services provide solid waste and wastewater collection services. Our population is over 116,000 people, and that includes all of the city of Costa Mesa, parts of the city of Newport Beach, and a little bit of unincorporated county. My budget is about $12 million, and I report to a 5 board of directors that are elected to 4-year terms. I have a staff of 20, so we're a relatively small district. Next slide, please. So the city of Costa Mesa has really been on the cutting edge to tackle the homelessness issues. They've been addressing this issue for the past 7 years. They had a task force, and that task force decided to come up with this what they call the focused developing of a multifaceted program on homelessness. And they created what's called the Network for Homeless Solutions, which is really a collaborative approach of everyone in the community. And you can see that on the list. It includes city leadership, outreach workers, code enforcement, churches, nonprofits, volunteers, the library. And I have to admit, I've only been on this committee for about 1.5 years. And it was because of the issue I'm going to be describing here in a few minutes that at the time the assistant city manager, Rick Francis, challenged me to join this committee. And quite frankly, I was so glad he did, because the individuals that serve on this committee, it's just amazing. The commitment and dedication they have to helping people in Costa Mesa. They're extraordinary people. I'm just in awe every time I meet with them. And as you see on the screen, they've been very successful in reducing chronic homelessness in the city from 158 to 103 individuals. So they've been very successful and on the cutting edge for reducing homelessness in the city. Next slide, please. Okay, so the issue, how we got involved, was there was some illegal activities going on around some of the city parks, around the restrooms, and God bless the city manager's heart. He kept the bathrooms open, but it was just creating a lot of illegal activities there, and a huge outcry from the public. I'm sure he got a lot of pressure from his bosses that you really had no choice but to close the park restrooms down. Even before the restrooms were closed, obviously homeless people were defecating in the public, but now with the restrooms closed, it makes matters worse. And of course, as we all know, there was a Hepatitis A outbreak in San Diego and Los Angeles. And so my board had great concerns that, an outbreak like that could occur in our community. And so they really had concerns about the public's health. Next slide, please. So our mission is protecting the community's health and the environment. And since we are a sanitary district, we definitely thought there was a nexus with the bathroom issues and trying to find a restroom for the homeless population. So we thought there's a nexus. We can use public money on helping this issue. And we looked at alternative restrooms. I think a lot of people have seen on this picture the Portland Loo. I'm sure Jonathan has seen this because I think they tried it in San Diego. They're popping up all over the place. I think in city of Monrovia, they installed one in their parks. City of Santa Ana's going to install one. And quite frankly, I think this is kind of the wave of the future for park restrooms, because in my opinion, the traditional blocked wall restrooms, no windows inside is quite dangerous, because once you walk in, you don't know what you're walking into in those restrooms. And at least with the Portland Loo, you can see if there's someone in the restroom, you can see if there's more than one person. If there's any illegal activities, I think you can pretty much figure that out. But unfortunately, they're very costly. To purchase and install one's about $100,000. And if we wanted to install one where there's existing water and sewer system, that means the city would have to tear down the existing restrooms, and it was just too costly and cost prohibitive. So we had to look at another alternative. So next slide, please. So through our research, we found this program to be very successful in other cities like San Francisco, Miami, Sacramento, Denver, and Austin. They call it like the pit stop. And what it is basically 2 restrooms on a trailer. And these aren't your restrooms you see at a soccer game. I mean, these restrooms have flushing toilets, they have a mirror inside, a sink with running waters, solar-powered lights, wastebasket. And they're really nice restrooms. It would give the homeless people some dignity when they have to use the restrooms. Now, what we learned from this program, the key for it to be successful, and this was critical, is that you have to have a paid attendant at the facility all the time. And that was to make sure that there was no vandalism occurred, that it was used for its purpose, only one person goes in the restrooms, the attendant could also help clean up the restroom if need be. So that was really critical. And then the also nice part about the program is that we can set the hours. Our intention was not to put something out there 24/7. It was really to put up the restrooms out there for 6 to 8 hours a day, maybe in the morning, in the evening, whichever we found the demand was, we can be flexible on those hours. And we can place them strategically where the homeless were congregating. And then another benefit to this program is collecting data. So the paid attendant could track how many people were using the restroom, what was the gender, where were they coming from. Maybe if they weren't from Costa Mesa, we can try to maybe connect them to their families that live outside of Costa Mesa and give them bus tickets so they can go there. So there was definitely some benefits we saw from the program. Now, it's true, since we never implemented this program, it could be successful, it could not, so that's why we recommended, hey, let's at least try a 6-month program, collect the data, and let's evaluate afterwards, and then we can make a decision. So the total cost is about $43,000. I submitted the proposal to the Network for Homeless Solutions Committee, and they liked it, approved it, recommended it. Next slide, please. So then, after the NHS approved it, I took it to my board on November 30th. They approved the program, agreed funding it, half of it, $21,500, and hoping that the city will fund the other half. So on February 20th of 2018, the City Council heard it, and let me tell you, it was extremely controversial. Social media was lit up. I mean, they were just on blogs and on Facebook, just talking all kinds of stuff about the program. Did not like it, obviously. In fact, one of the council members publicly said that the Costa Mesa Sanitary District were a bunch of idiots, which was quite shocking. He said that publicly. And quite frankly, I don't think he understood about the program. He thought that the program was going to eliminate homelessness, and that was never the intention. The intention of the program was to protect the public's health. That was the intention. And so there was, as you see on the screen, there was concerns from residents about how it was going to attract homelessness from other communities, which, quite frankly, I thought was ridiculous because people from Santa Ana are going to walk all the way down to Costa Mesa to use their restrooms. But they had that concerns. They had that concern that we're going to place it in neighborhoods, and it just was not going to solve the problems. Next slide. However, the good news, the majority of the City Council did approve the concept. They did see some value in the program. However, they wanted some more community outreach, especially with the business community. So the district took the lead and hired a consultant. It cost just about $4,000. And then we met with city officials to identify businesses that were impacted by the homeless population. We didn't want to do a survey for all the businesses, just where we knew there were certain areas in the city where the homeless populations were congregating, and that was the area we wanted the business we wanted to ask the questions. Next slide, please. So we obtained from those locations, we obtained 600 emails from city-issued business license, and then the survey was really short and simple. I mean, like I said, only 8 questions. It took them like less than 5 minutes to complete it. We fired off the email with this cover letter to let them know that it was a legitimate survey, and we got an overwhelming response, as you see, 48%, which is phenomenal. I've done surveys for a long time, and usually you're lucky if you get 20 to 30%, but we got nearly half of the respondents, which is incredible. That was the good news. So the results, though, was a little bit surprising, which you see the next slide. So this was what was surprising to us, is that majority of the businesses did not want this program. They, as you see, 49% did not believe it would not alleviate the homeless population affecting their business. 38% said it was a horrible idea. And then another 48% said that it would not have a positive impact on their business. Now, the one, I guess we want to say one good thing, or how you want to say one positive thing out of the survey, as you see, is, I mean, at least we can really recognize that 80% of the respondents said that they're having an impact, that homelessness is having an impact on their businesses. And you'll see on the pie chart how they're impacted. You got people leaving themselves on the property, loitering, sleeping on the property, trashing the property. Other, that would be, I guess we from the comments we got from the survey, they said people were having sex on their property, they were bathing themselves, they were threatening customers. So it was a whole slew of things. One council member did say that after he saw the results, he was very excited, that he was very energized that, hey, we know there's a problem now, let's go try to fix it. And he was going to try to get some more money in the budget. And I don't know if that happened or not, but at least, you know, he was energized that we have an issue, let's try to solve it. Next slide, please. So I presented the findings to my board just recently, and we all knew that, hey, the business community is not going to support this program. We knew the city wasn't going to support it. So my board directed me to stop pursuing this program, but continue working with city officials and the Network for Homeless Solution Committee on solving homelessness. Next slide, please. So what was my lessons learned? I think really what I should have done first, I think it was a good suggestion by the city council to get some more outreach, and I should have did that before I approached the city council. We should have done the survey before we went to the council. And if the results came out like it did, then the next step was to engage with those business communities and find out, well, why don't you think this program would work? And kind of reiterate to them, it's just a pilot program. It's just going to be for 6 months. Let's see if it works. And if it doesn't, fine. At least we tried. And then I think it would also been helpful if I had some more community outreach to the public members. I don't think I would be able to change a lot of their minds, because I think their mind was pretty much made up. But I wanted to reiterate it's a pilot program. It's just temporary. So let's collect the data and then evaluate it and go from there. Next slide, please. So I've been asked what are some of the best practices for special districts, and what I would say for those in the cities, and if anyone from special districts are listening, is to create a trustworthy and positive working relationship with your city. Even though my board and the city council, the relationship is a little tense at times, on the staffing level, our relationship is fantastic. We have a fantastic working relationship with the city and the district. We serve on a liaison committee every 3 months with the city, us. We also have a Mesa Water District in our city and school district, and we share information. We have a development review committee that we sit on. We share resources, very good working relationship. And then the other best practice I would say is, you know, you're not alone. You know, cities can't do this alone, and I think special districts need to step up. I list some of those special districts in California, like sanitary districts, community services districts, recreation and park districts, open space, transit, library. These are all special districts that I'm sure are having impacts from homelessness. And if we work together with the cities, then we can help solve this problem. Next slide, please. So the challenges and how we address them, you know, as I mentioned on the survey of the business community, talking to the city manager, we were thinking about maybe creating a subcommittee on the Network for Homeless Solution Committee. Still thinking about that, but that's one idea, and that subcommittee can address the issues on the survey. We do have a lot of drug addictions on the street here in Costa Mesa, and people are, you know, would say, well, you know, I find needles in the streets or in the parks. What am I supposed to do with them? We do have sharp containers that we give out to the public and to city staff. We actually have a really good program with the fire department. They have a bunch of our sharp containers. They give out those to the public, and then we have drop-off boxes where you can dispose the sharp containers, and we also have agreements with pharmacies where you can drop them off as well. And then I have a code enforcement officer. One of his duties is to enforce scavenging, people who go in and take recyclables out of the trash carts. And you know, in the past, we just kind of shoo them away. We don't write them a citation like some cities do, because to me that's just what for. They can't afford paying it anyway, so that just seems meaningless to me. But one of the philosophies we change with my code enforcement officer is that if he sees someone that appears to be homeless and that person is going through the trash cart, he will ask that person if he or she needs help and wants to get off the street. And if that person says yes, then my code enforcement officer will reach out to the city outreach workers and and they would get in touch with that person and help get that person off the street. And then the last challenge I think we had was the newsletter. The city always had a problem. People always say, well, we're not doing anything about the homelessness, and the city's doing a lot of great stuff. And so we have a newsletter that goes out quarterly to about over 22,000 homes. So we put some information in the newsletter to let people know about the homeless, the number for homeless solutions, and how they can help. Next slide. These are my key partners. I just mentioned the city of Costa Mesa. Trellis is a nonprofit that's very active in our community with the homelessness. They helped me try to pick locations where the restrooms. And then Deb Johnson, she's the one that did my survey, but she also has a really neat organization called Second Chance, where she takes recovering alcoholics and drug addicts and get them jobs, get them good paying jobs so they can get back and contribute to the society. And she has a lot of good success stories. And if you want to get in touch with her, learn more about what she does, let me know and I'll give you her contact information. Last slide, please. Here's my contact. I do want to mention, I put Maria Ullman and Stacy Lumley from the city of Costa Mesa. I did give them a heads up I was doing this, and they graciously said I can put their names on there. But I really recommend that you try to reach out to them and learn all the stuff that they're doing, the great work that they're doing in the city to reduce homelessness in Costa Mesa. The work they do is fantastic, and it's really been an honor working with them. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Scott. So again, before we get to Q&A, if you have questions for Scott or Robert or Jonathan, please type in your questions into that question box. Before we get there, I won't go through all of these slides, but I do want to share a bit about the League and CSAG Joint Homelessness Task Force and the report that was recently released. One of the key things, a lot of our speakers have talked about today was the importance of collaboration. And in 2016, the League and CSAG formed the Joint Homelessness Task Force to really look at this problem of homelessness and some of those solutions and how communities were addressing it. Over the course of the year, they met to, again, look at what were some of those challenges, as well as causes of homelessness, what were some of the collaborative local solutions that were working, and what were some of the needed education and resource and tools that local governments needed. And the culmination of that work was really this task force report that was recently released, and we really looked at the report as kind of a toolkit. It contains a number of different resources and tools that local governments can start using to tackle homelessness, and it's on ILG's website at that link below, but you can also find it attached in the little handout section of the webinar. Just to give you a sense of the different components this report includes, you'll find things like tools and resources to collect data and share, such as the Silicon Valley triage tool. It provides different funding options and revenue streams that you can consider, both all from federal, state, and local sources. We also include a number of different case stories as part of the report. We understand that homelessness, there really is no one-size-fits-all solution. So our goal was to include a number of different ways communities are approaching homelessness to allow local governments to, customize and think about what might work best in their community. We also include homelessness plan templates and things you should consider when you're putting a plan together. And then also, obviously, key themes to addressing homelessness is collaboration. So we include some tips on how you can really enhance your collaboration. And then lastly, how you think about building support, with the public for these different programs and efforts. And we are always looking for different efforts to continue highlighting how different communities are addressing homelessness. So please do reach out to us if there's a story you want to share. And again, the report can be found on ILG's website, and it's attached to the handout section of the webinar. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the Q&A. And again, if you have any questions, please type them in the question box and we'll do our best to get to them. Our first question is for Scott. The question is, how do you find an independent special district in your area? Is there a resource that lists these districts? And from an ILG's perspective, we want to share that the California Special Districts Association is a great resource. You can go to their website at www.csca.net, and you should be able to find some more information on different special districts there. But Scott, I don't know if you have any advice for people who might want to be contacting and reaching out to their special districts.
Yeah, another resource is LAFCO, your local agency formation commission, because they got to do MSRs just like with the city. So that's another resource where you can find where the special district is in your region, is LAFCO.
Okay, great. So our next question is for Robert. Robert, a number of people had different questions regarding some of the building code requirements for the tub sheds, as well as some of the environmental processes.
Sure. So when we initially pursued 14 Forward, it was on county property, which obviously, and it was located within the city of Marysville. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility since it is on county-owned property. As far as folks staying in the shelters, which they can stay up to 80 plus days, we've recently extended that. We had, again, CRLA with us when we were on the phone with HCD because the HCD found out about our project, and rightfully so, they had some concerns. But as we went through them, we set this up as temporary emergency shelter, which if your jurisdiction adopts an ordinance doing such, it does provide some relief, quite a bit actually, from having particular requirements met. And we were able to overcome them fairly easily. And HCD was very helpful in some of our discussions too, but we really had no issues surrounding their permitting of those types of structures for temporary emergency shelter.
Great, thanks, Robert. Our next question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, the question is, did San Diego County follow up with that were housed in the Housing First program? How many remained in housing through the program 3, 6, and 12 months after exiting?
Yes, that's a very important metric that we do track at those specific intervals, 3, 6, and 12, and we're very happy to share that 95% of the clients that have been housed are still housed.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. Our next question is for Scott, and I think Scott, you've kind of answered this already, but we had a question regarding can people access the survey questions from the survey you gave?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Yeah, is there a link where people can access the questions to the survey that you conducted?
It is. I can. You know what? I can send you the link if you want to send it out to everyone. It is on our website, on our staff reports. But to make it easy, I can send it to you if that makes sense.
That would be great, and I can send that out. And as a reminder, folks, this recording and all the PowerPoint slides will be available on ILG's website, and I'll send that out following the webinar. So our next question is for Robert. Robert, did Yuba County have someone who works for the government who exclusively champions what was presented, worked on, collaboration, etc.?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yes. Did Yuba County have someone who worked for the government who exclusively championed the 14 Forward efforts?
So I will self-admit that I was a big champion, but it really wasn't my efforts. It was the efforts of numerous folks, our Health and Human Services Director, our Community Development Director, our Public Works Director, you name it. But if somebody's looking for a contact, I would be more than happy to speak with anyone and tell them some of the further outcomes that we've achieved. You can only cover so much in 12 minutes, right? And I would contact me. I would be more than happy to refer you to the right person or chat with me for a few minutes too. I'd love to share.
Perfect. And to everyone on the line, the contact information for our speakers is included on the webinar PowerPoint. So our next question is for Jonathan. Jonathan, given the low vacancy rates, how were you able to find so many units through the landlord engagement program to house homeless individuals?
Well, that really is in large part to the proactive efforts of our San Diego Housing Commission, the local realtor agencies, San Diego Realtors Association, San Diego Apartment Association, and really at the very top is the mayor himself, who made it a priority for him to communicate with the private sector about these opportunities. But we've hosted about 5 or 6 different landlord engagement seminars to invite these stakeholders down to City Hall or to various other venues to learn about the program, and for the mayor to personally make that ask to these individuals to be part of that solution. And that's really led to a large part of the success that we've seen in recruiting the initial 435 landlords, and that has since expanded to upwards of 600 as we've made this program available to all homeless subpopulations.
Thanks, Jonathan. So we only have time for just one more question, but I do want to remind folks that you can feel free to reach out to us or speakers if you have additional questions. This last question is for Robert. Were you able to get any of the top sheds donated?
So yes, in short, the tough sheds were purchased through Home Depot, and once Home Depot found out what we were doing, they slashed the price significantly. And then we had our youth build program build the bunks, and Habitat for Humanity donated the insulation. And then Home Depot contacted their partners, the corporate partners. They donated fake grass for each of the units out front, stepping stones for the front of the door, and some other hardware. And then, like I said, I think to date we've received well over $250,000 in donations for 14 Forward. And the cost of the unit, 20 of them at $3,500 a piece, have been more than paid for. And we also did a little bit of an ownership program. So folks like Sutter, Ride Out Health, Ampla Health, and several other community organizations like Kiwanis and Rotaries, they bought a unit. And basically we put a little placard out in front, and they paid $3,500 in cash or check, and we put the little placard out front that they donated that unit. And so anyway, costs more than covered, not only for the units, but the entire site and then some.
That's great. So we are just about out of time for our webinar today. But again, if we were not able to get to your question, feel free to reach out to us or our speakers. Their contact information is included in the PowerPoint slide that will be going out following the webinar. I do want to thank our speakers again for joining us today and sharing more about their amazing efforts. If you want to learn more about some of these resources, please visit ILG's homelessness resource page that includes the report, past presentations, as well as this webinar recording. The CSAC Institute will also be hosting a course on supporting homeless and at-risk youth on June 22nd. And then the League and CSAC Joint Homelessness Task Force is looking to do some additional education and convenings in the future. If you want to keep updated on future webinars, as well as resources, please feel free to follow us on our social media or sign up for our newsletter. And if you have any additional questions, contact me, Hong Tran, and that's my email there on the slide. And again, I want to thank our speakers and everyone for joining us today. Thank you.